Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan.
Find any trigger warnings in our episode notes. We're happy you're joining us and enjoy the show. Welcome to Season 2. Here we go. We missed you guys. We had one update over the summer, and now we're getting into it. We got, I think, 24 books ahead of us.
Yep. Welcome back.
That's a lot of reading.
We have a lot of books. And I don't know. I don't even know what to say. It's a lot. I have a spreadsheet. It's all ready to go. We've got some fun surprises in the mix. And we've got a fair amount of books that are coming out as new, some of which will have some tight turnarounds with release dates, but we figure y'all can listen whenever. It's more of an us problem. But yeah, it's going to be a wild ride, hopefully a fun one.
Yeah, Amber's very organized. She likes to make calendars and checklists and all that kind of stuff. And I just keep asking, like, so what's the next book we're reading? And I'll keep asking that even though there's a clearly available checklist.
It reminds me, there's this meme that's going around where it's like, hi, I'm Amber. I do all the planning. And then it's like, hi, I'm Dan. And then, hi, I'm Amber. I do all the editing. Hi, I'm Dan. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah, check us out at Dusk to Dawn Podcast on Instagram. There is where we post usually we say like the next 3 books we're going to be talking about and when a new episode is live and all that kind of stuff. So that's the place to follow us. We'll go over it again at the end of the episode, but just so you know, we're starting obviously with Reformatory today, and then we're going to read Tastes Like Candy by Jessica Lacy and Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. And that should be a fun one. I haven't read anything by Chuck Tingle, but I am going to an author talk in a week. So I'll have
It will have already happened.
Yes, it will have already happened, but it's the future from right now while we're recording.
Yes, it's the future from when we're recording, but it will be something we can talk about for that podcast. I have read 2 books by him. Well, and I've actually read 3 books by Jessica Lacy, so I guess I'm ahead of the gang.
Supposedly Chuck Tingle, well, not supposedly, it sounds like it does happen. He like just wears a bag over his head all the time, so that sounds interesting.
Yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about with him. He's a character.
But let's go into the Reformatory by Tananarive. Why don't you kick it off with the book summary?
I'll just kick us.
Oh, that fits with the book. You could say a kick is the inciting incident.
Oh, it is indeed. Okay, so the Reformatory. A 12-year-old black boy living in the Jim Crow South kicks a local white farm boy and ends up getting sentenced to 6 months' time in the Gracetown School for Boys, a reform school run by a sadistic warden. This book won the Bram Stoker Award for Best Novel and the World Fantasy Award for Best Novel in 2024 when it was released.
Yeah, and Tananarive, just a little background of before I get into her, she had a great uncle named Robert Stevens who died in the Dozier School of Boys, which was also a reform school that kind of got this whole thing kickstarted in her head. And according to the Florida State Attorney General's office, the real Robert Stevens was allegedly stabbed by another boy at the age of 15 and buried in an unmarked grave. Now, this Robert Stevens in the Reformatory is not supposed to be based on him. It's more like an homage to him because they had very little information about this guy. Most of the people in the family didn't know about him. I think Dew and her father, I think it was, found out about this whole thing 10 or 12 years ago or something like that. And she decided she could try to get to the bottom of all of it and do a nonfiction story, but she's a fiction writer and wanted to explore it that way.
This reminds me of a lot of those, it's same vein, different history, but you see a lot of historical fiction that takes place during World War II and stuff, and people exploring their family. And I feel like this is the same vein, but a much less explored topic, which is really good that we have this book coming out, because it's a rough history we have here in America, and this really exposes some of the nasty shit that has gone on.
Yeah, before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about the author. This was my first time hearing about her. Tananarive Due is a prolific writer and recipient of multiple awards, including the American Book Award, the NAACP Image Award, a World Fantasy Award, and the Bram Stoker Award. She's also a lecturer at UCLA, where she teaches the course The Sunken Place, Racism and Survival in the Black Horror Aesthetic, which sounds really fun.
I would take that class.
Yeah, I forgot if I heard this when I was looking at interviews with her or if I heard it somewhere else, but one of the really interesting things that was talked about, like Black people in horror, is that, you know, the common reaction of characters in a horror situation are like, don't go into that house, or like, don't go to that scary place.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Black people, at least in America, they're like, they wouldn't go to that place they shouldn't go because they're used to like listening to their gut. And so if they're like, I got a bad feeling about that place, they won't go that way. So if you kind of think about it, and, you know, I'm generalizing, this is something that somebody, she might have been talking about.
You see this in films for sure.
Yeah.
The Black characters doing that. And then it almost becomes a joke. Like, are you dumb? Why would you go in there?
Yeah. Like within your history, you've learned like to trust your gut in these kind of situations. So it's just a fascinating take on how different cultures could be represented in horror in different ways.
We also we touched on this topic a bit when I was reading The Black Guy Dies First, which is a great book to get some ideas of Black people in film, in horror film, like the tropes that surround them. So
so some of Due's books include Ghost Summer Stories, which sounds really cool because those short stories take place in Gracetown, Florida, which is the same fictional setting as the Reformatory. So I might pick that one up. And then she's written other novels, My Soul to Keep, The Good House, The Living Blood, over a dozen others. I haven't read any of them, but I like the Reformatory a lot, so maybe I will. She's also was an executive producer on the Shudder documentary Horror Noir, which explores the history of Black Americans in the horror genre. And she co-hosts a podcast with her husband called Life Writing Right for Your Life, and very much related to the Reformatory. Her late mother was civil rights activist Patricia Stevens Due, and her father, John Dorsey Due Jr., a civil rights attorney, inspired the character John Dorsey in the Reformatory, and he actually helped her write some of the scenes based on his own experiences working civil cases in the Jim Crow era.
that is so cool that she had that resource and that she had that, you know, was able to do that with her dad. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's cool. I think they like found out about this whole situation with their relative together. And she did have like a post on, I think she's pretty active on Instagram.
She is.
Do you know her handle or anything off the top of your head? I didn't look it up.
Yes. Her handle is her name, Tananarive Due, and it's just at Tananarive Due. So easy to find her.
But I did see a post that she had up that was cool where it said like working with her dad on that character and just generally in this novel was like a cool bonding experience. And that sounds awesome to have a bonding experience over writing a book.
Especially writing a horror book.
What, like not often you'll get a horror writer talking to their parents about horror and having the parent be interested. I'm guessing the dad was, I guess I can't speak for the dad. Maybe the dad actually liked horror.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think about that sometimes with my dad. I'm like, oh, I could talk about, you know, nerdy stuff with my dad. I'm like, wait, he's the one who got me into science fiction. So I don't know. It's weird. It's like, there's this blockage in my head that people who are older than me can't like science fiction and horror. I don't know why. I mean,
he just recommended a science fiction book to me not that long ago.
Yeah.
And of course I don't have it off the top of my head, but
yeah, he just recommended Backyard Starship to me, which is a series. And he got me into reading another urban fantasy. Anyway.
Oh, like the Jim Butcher stuff?
Yeah, Jim Butcher. Yes, exactly that. Yeah, so I don't know why, but I have this weird thing. I'm like, older people can't like horror. That's my thing. I don't know.
It's all for me.
Sorry, everyone. I don't know. I guess my bias is coming out.
Speaking of biases, let's talk about this book.
Yes.
I think bias is a very big understatement for this.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's like one or two in here. I don't know.
I feel like we should talk a little bit, obviously, like introduce some of the characters, maybe talk about the Jim Crow era, just because we do have some international listeners. Mm-hmm. So like just generally, I guess we could just do that right now. So this is taking place in, I think it's the 1950s, mostly in Florida in the fictional town of Gracetown. Jim Crow era was basically from like late 19th century to mid 20th century, and it was legalized segregation of whites and blacks. So like education, recreation facilities, restrooms. The dad in this story meets the mom, and she's like sitting on a whites only bench. So he's like, wow, he thought she was really like gutsy for that, which she was.
Yeah, she was.
But just
killed for that.
Yeah, but just like very strong legal and cultural segregation between the races.
Yeah, and so it started in the mid 19th century because the Civil War ended in 1865. And right after the Civil War, we had a period of Reconstruction, and that was heavily supported by the federal government, and a lot of progress was made in a very short amount of time. There were a lot of Black people who were able to start getting educated, as well as starting to make a dent in seats in government. And there was a huge influx of Black men specifically, because this is still the 19th century. Women weren't allowed yet, but Black men started to get legislative positions. And then pretty soon after Reformation came to a grinding halt because the North was starting to worry about losing...
Reconstruction. You said Reformation.
Did I say
That's
the Reformation?
That's a European religious thing.
I think as the Reformatory,
Yeah.
Reformation, Reconstruction, there's a lot of R's floating around in my mind. Thank you. Yeah, the Reconstruction pretty much abruptly ended. And Jim Crow started. It wasn't originally called Jim Crow. That came later. It supposedly comes from a minstrel character, which, if you don't know what minstrel is, there's a lot of blackface, white people painting their faces black and making fun of Black people as a comedy shtick. And so Jim Crow came from that, and through Jim Crow, you get the whites only, blacks only divide, which is where this book takes place.
And so it's really focused on this one Black family, the Stevenses. We have the main character, Robert Stephen, or Robbie Stephen.
Well, his name is Robert Stevens Jr., because his father is Robert also, but he goes by Robbie, and then he decides to start going by Robert. But it's him and his sister Gloria are the two main characters.
Yeah, and he's 12 years old.
Equally, yeah.
And she's 15, maybe 14, 15?
Yeah, I think she's 15.
And what's cool is, so he, later on when he gets to the reform school, discovers that he has the ability to see ghosts, which they call haints. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Gloria has the ability to project and see into the future. Sometimes it'll be like she'll shake someone's hand and she'll get a flash of a premonition, and she can't control it, which obviously comes into like some cool dramatic moments where she really wants to see the future, but she can't, or she sees the future and like doesn't want to, or whatever, like it's shocking. She can't control when it happens, but occasionally she does have like premonitions of what might happen to somebody. And she's basically taking care of him with their aunt, who is Ms. Lottie, because what happened is recently their mother died of cancer, and Gloria has kind of the ability to occasionally like look into the future. She can't control it, but for example, there are a few times she saw like her mom at the sink and just was like, knew she was really sick, and it kind of got these premonitions of her becoming sick before other people noticed. But the mom passed away, and the dad has been run out of town. He's gone to Chicago because he was accused of raping a white woman, which was like a very common tactic used against Black men.
You didn't even have to rape them. You just had to look at them the wrong way. But yes, that was a common tactic.
Yeah,
sure.
I think
it still is in some places.
Yeah, the classic case that most people have heard of was Emmett Till, who was a 14-year-old boy who was visiting from Chicago to Mississippi, and he was accused of whistling at a white woman in a grocery store and then was brutally killed for it. And his mother decided to have an open casket for his funeral so that the public could see how devastating the response was to this minor thing that may or may not have happened. And that kind of...
if it did, even if he did whistle at her, which I'm sure he didn't because duh, but like in no world does that equate anywhere near what happened to this kid being okay.
Yeah.
Just, it's insane.
And that helped kick off a lot of like the civil rights movements. But it was a tactic that was used against black men, like, hey, they're looking at our women. Let's use that as an excuse to like run this guy out of town or worse. So the father's gone and like the town wants to know where he is, but they're not going to go to Chicago to find him, which leaves Gloria taking care of Robbie. And she's had to leave school to be able to do that, which her mother really wanted her to go to school and finish school. She went to school and she's a reader. She's very intelligent, but she's like,
she wants to go to university. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's got to take care of her little brother. And their aunt, Miss Lottie, is very elderly and is like a huge part of the family, but can't take care of them in the same way as like a younger parent.
She does a lot. It's interesting because I feel like Gloria makes her seem like she's fragile, but damn, that woman does a lot in this book.
She's a really cool character.
She's a very strong woman.
And another thing we should mention is that they're living with Miss Lottie because the dad was building them a pretty nice house next to the lake before he was run out of town, and that got burned down. And it was almost because they're like, what does this black family think they're doing building a lakefront property? Like,
yeah, because they currently were living in a shed that had their stuff, but it was just a piece of shit shed. And so Gloria and Robbie do live with Miss Lottie. They kind of live also in that shed. They go back and forth.
Yeah. So those are the main characters. Let's talk about like what happens to get Robbie sent to the reformatory. Maybe go into like the McCormicks. So Gloria is walking Robbie to school because he's still in school, and they have to walk by a fence, which is the property of this like powerful white family called the McCormicks.
And they call it McCormick Street because they're the family of the area and they were the big slave owners in the past.
And one of the like interesting points here is that Gloria and Robbie, there's like a swimming pond or something, or the lake nearby, whatever it is, where they talk about how like they used to go swimming with the McCormick boys when they were younger. But then at some point in the development, Gloria and Robbie started hitting puberty. It just became known that like, okay, we're not playing together anymore or swimming together anymore. But I guess when they were like young enough, it was okay. 19-year-old Lyle McCormick comes out and sees them walking, and he knows Gloria and Robbie because they live close together, and also because they did have those social interactions when it was deemed okay at a young age.
And even during slavery, children of the slaves would be brought into the house to be like play friends with the white kids, and it same kind of thing. It was okay up to a point, and then it was like, okay, no, now you go be a slave. And in this case, it's more coming from the other way around. Gloria is starting to feel anxious around Lyle for multiple reasons. First of all, they're getting older. She's recognized that he's got an eye for her. And so she has to kind of worry about not only being a woman around a young man, but a black woman around a young man. And that's just a very, very dangerous situation. And later on in the book, she kicks herself a lot, no pun intended, because she should have seen this interaction coming. But basically, they're walking down this street. Lyle comes up and is like, hey, we should go to the pond together. And she's like, no, absolutely not. And he just grabs her arm, and Robbie just sees red and tells him to leave her alone. And Lyle's like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Robbie kicks him, basically.
Kicks him in the knee, and Lyle is a promising football player.
So we got to make sure that he's okay. And he kind of stumbles and says, oh shit, what the hell, and he's just going to leave it as is. But then his dad sees what happened, comes over, boxes Robbie in the head, makes his ear bleed, and for days afterward, his hearing's all messed up, and he might have a mild concussion, but we don't know because he doesn't get medical attention. And they drag him to the station, and he's arrested for kicking Lyle, who was assaulting his sister. But, we don't care about that part. It goes through a mock trial. It's very clear that it doesn't matter what actually happened. Robbie's going to this reformatory school.
And he gets sentenced for 6 months, which the judge feels kind of good about himself because it's like, hey, that's pretty lenient. He's only getting 6 months at this place. But
because it could be up until you're an adult.
Yeah, he could have been sentenced until, like, I think this place can keep a kid legally until they're 21. So he could have given him a lot longer.
Yeah, it's a very frustrating start. Right off the bat, you see how just completely unfair everything is for Gloria and Robbie in so many different regards. Just bad luck and just a shitty environment with Jim Crow. So you're thrown into the mix. It's fun.
It's fun. So he's sent to the reformatory. I want to talk a little bit about what the reformatory is based on. It's based on reform schools, and specifically was called the Florida State Reform School that opened in 1900. And it went through a couple of different name changes. It was this Florida School for Boys, the Arthur G. Dozier School, and it was in Marianna, Florida. It became the largest reform school in the country, and it didn't get closed down till 2011, which is pretty crazy. But kids were sent there for crimes like theft and murder, but also really minor offenses like disobeying their parents or skipping school or even being an orphan.
Well, you weren't allowed to be a vagrant, right? If you're just walking down the side of the road during working hours, you could get picked up by the police and arrested if you were black.
Yeah. And black and white boys went here. They were segregated, and there was basically like a shed there called the White House, which is relevant to the shed in this book called the Fun House, where kids were just like mercilessly beaten, just like whipped and paddled and all this kind of stuff. For as much of a minor infraction as like if a white boy talked to a black boy, they would probably both be sent there. But just like anything that was deemed in need of correction could lead to just brutal beatings. And I mean, this is like some of the interviews I read were talking about people who had gotten hit like upward of 100 times in a single visit to the White House.
Yeah, well, it's also not surprising because these people, at least the beginning generation, were slave owners and they were used to that. That was just how they did punishment, you know?
Yeah. And the kids are forced to work without pay, like harvesting crops, manufacturing bricks, cutting sugar cane. They would go to a school, so they had some schooling hours. But there was also, there was a cemetery at Dozier and also at the reformatory in the book called Boot Hill, where there are some crosses, but for the most part, the boys are just like buried in unmarked graves. And at like recently at the real Dozier School of Reform, there have been like, there's like I don't know if archaeologist is the right name, but I don't know. There's some dude who's been going there with like, what's it called?
Metal detector?
Kind of like a metal detector, some kind of radar thing. It kind of looks like a lawnmower, where he just like goes over the grounds and it will like find unmarked graves.
Oh, like it'll ping.
Yeah, it'll
body,
ping.
like
Yes. Yeah, something like that.
I wonder if it's the density of bone or if it's some kind of chemical that's released. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah. Because apparently they're trying to find out like where some of these boys are and if they can match them back up with the family, but it's really hard also to get good DNA readings from old bones. But
especially if they're just thrown in the dirt, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're still trying. But at the school's peak in the Jim Crow 1960s, there were 500 boys housed at the Dozier School, and nearly 100 boys that we know about died there between 1900 and 1973.
Kind of reminds you of the schools, quote unquote, for Native American children.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, they call it a reform school, but really it's just like forced labor and do what we say or you're going to get brutally beaten.
And even if you do what we say, if we feel like it, I'm sure there's a lot of that too. We'll beat you anyway.
Yeah. So this
Yay,
is
America.
This is very much a humans are the real monsters kind of horror story. If anything,
with some ghosts. We get some ghosts.
No, yeah, that was next. So this is definitely heavily a historical humans are the real monsters kind of book, and the horror elements or supernatural elements are definitely lighter than the human elements, but why don't we go into the supernatural elements because they're still very important.
Okay, yeah. When I first picked this book up, I was like, is this horror or is this historical fiction? And yes, of course, a lot of American history is horrific, but I was thinking more in the sense of horror as a genre. And it's on the fringe, I think. There are ghosts in it, but it's not... I feel like if this were made into a film as is, it would be more of a horror of our culture and our past.
Not like an A24 film. I guess they could do it.
Actually, I don't know. They do a lot of stuff, but it's not like Jason or Freddy Krueger. And the ghosts in this, I would say haints, but they actually like the one boy named Blue, he says, I hate that. Don't call us that. So I'm like, I want to respect the ghost child.
Respect the ghost. Hey, that's a big spoiler. And I just made it even more apparent. But yeah, they do use the word haints. So basically Robert can see and like strongly sense haints, which is a term from Southern folklore. They were malevolent spirits or ghosts that linger in the world of the living, causing harm or misfortune, which really works well with this book because in this sense, it's like the ghosts of the prior boys at the school who have been killed.
Yeah, so there was a big fire and a lot of boys died. And more than just Robbie feel their presence, sometimes see them, it brings up an interesting question of... In this book, the reality seems that ghosts coming into the world as a physical manifestation is normal. There's no like, wait, you see ghosts? That's crazy. It's just like, oh yeah, we saw that one in the kitchen the other day. And it was so nonchalant how they discussed these ghost sightings. I was like, okay, well, in this world, it must be normal to see a ghost.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, Robbie can see ghosts. They're there.
Yeah.
He just has a greater sensitivity to it.
So we have to suspend our disbelief to that, which is easy to do. It's not weird or anything. So these ghosts are around and they're mostly just there. They seem to not have strong influence on the physical world, but the warden is like really adverse to them. And we find out throughout the story that these boys might not have just died in an accidental fire. And therefore, obviously, we can assume we know who's responsible. And the idea that, yes, they are haints for the people who are in charge of these children, the warden and the staff, who are generally white people and very much okay with beating children half to death and on occasion to death, versus the children who see them and for the most part, they're harmless. They just say, oh, if you ignore them, they go away.
And as happens in like so many class and race-based situations like this, there's the warden Haddock, who's white, and a lot of people in the office around him are white, but he does have black staff as well, and some of them who are also sadistic, right? Or at least tolerate the warden's sadism because they're expected to follow after the boss, right? And this book does a really good job of having like different shades of how characters respond to the situation. There's one character who's a black staffman and his name's Boone, and he's just like real mean. And he's not as bad as the warden, but like, he runs the place, and it's like these kids need to like, don't talk back, don't make eye contact, just don't be friends with each other, just get your work done, be quiet. But then there's also a character named Clutcher, and he's also a black man who is part of this bad situation, but isn't as close to the warden and doesn't see as much of the sadism.
He's also new.
And he's newer. So while he kind of lets some of this stuff happen in front of him and doesn't say anything about it, his like inner turmoil really starts coming in when he's starts to realize like how bad it is here. So there's all kind of like different shades of characters, and same with white characters. It's not just like all the white characters are evil in this. There are definitely some allies, but it's complicated. It's
so complicated, and it's true to life. I mean, even just talking about the different types of black staff, you got that with slavery, and you got that with Jim Crow, people pandering to the white elite, thinking that they're gonna get a better life if they sacrifice their fellow black people. And it's not true, but people need to try to do the best for themselves, and unfortunately that sometimes leads to throwing other people under the bus. And you see that really well with Miss Anne, who is Gloria's employer, and she does her best to help Gloria try to figure out how to get Robbie out of this school. And she gives her money, she gives her rides, she lets her use her phone, but even she has to be secretive so that her family doesn't see that she's helping a black woman, because she could get in trouble. And it becomes apparent that she knows the person who accuses Gloria's father of rape, but she's beat by her boyfriend and was basically told, you have to say he raped you, even though pretty much everyone in the town knows it's a lie. But she's scared for her own safety from her partner, and so she is willing to say this lie. And Gloria's like, well, you should just tell the truth. And yes, of course that's true, but it's so hard when you're put in a situation where you could get killed for it. So, and that happens also with the black employees at the Reformatory. There's just so many different levels. And this book does a really good job of not necessarily exploring each individual's place in that system, but pointing out and recognizing that there are many different layers. It's not black and white. There's a huge gray area and lots of webs intertwined, and that's what society is.
Yeah, there's a really interesting character named Mr. Lohman, who's a social worker, and he's from out of town, but he gets called in to help out with Robbie's case, and he's Jewish. The way he's introduced is he's called to pick up Robbie from the courthouse to take him to the Reformatory. And when Robbie's at the courthouse, the judge and the deputy are just like straight up racists and just like treat Robbie like crap. But then Mr. Lohman comes and picks up Robbie, and he's definitely more empathetic, because as a Jewish man, they've been on the receiving end of a lot of bigotry as well.
He also moved there from New York, so he's coming from a place where it's a lot less obvious, and there's no line dividing blacks and whites. It's more subtle up in the north.
And you can tell right away that the deputy kind of like scorns Lohman when he comes in, because he has like a nicer car, and he's from the north, and he's all that kind of stuff. And then while Lohman's driving Robbie to the Reformatory, he gives him his sandwich because he can tell that Robbie hasn't eaten and all these things. So he understands, and he does kind of help out. He makes a couple of calls to see like how Gloria can get to see Robbie during visiting hours and stuff, but he kind of holds back. Like a lot of these white characters that are trying to help feel like they need to like watch how far they go, because Lohman also thinks about his teenage boys. And he's like, they're already starting to get bullied at school for being Jewish. And, while he can maybe get a little further, or he can definitely get further talking to white people, they still view him as different as a Jewish man, right? So while he can help, he feels limited in how much that help can be.
Well, it was earlier. This was like the turn of the century when like Italians and Irish people were not seen as white, right? Like the 50s, it's kind of past that.
I think it not as much. So, I think that was more 19th century, but
yeah, because I feel like I don't know, but even it doesn't matter. Even if you're white, you're not white enough, But it's a fascinating thing to think about, right? Like you want to be a good person, you want to do your best towards others, but when is it okay to take care of your family first? Or is it ever? should they have to sacrifice themselves in order to be fair and truthful and help others around them who they don't even know? Like, it's such a difficult thing to ask someone to do, and most people won't do it. And hence we are talking about, a very real situation in the past where a lot of people couldn't stand up for others. And if everyone stood up who was able to, in support of especially these like children, for instance, it would be a completely different world. But doing it yourself, that is a rough place to be in,
Yeah.
So I appreciated that, because this book just frustrated the hell out of me. I was just so angry at just about everyone the entire time. Like, fuck all of you. Like, just be nice. Like, what the fuck?
The main plot is Robbie at the Reformatory and how he basically like tries to survive there and immediately is trying to find his way out. And then the subplot is his sister Gloria trying to get him out. So through like reaching out to Loman, the social worker, and seeing what kind of calls he can make to make things easier on Robbie, or maybe like get his sentence shortened, and getting money from Miss Powell and trying to get connections through her for somebody that could help them, and even going to an NAACP lawyer, John Dorsey, who was modeled off the author's father, and bringing him to Gracetown, which is even scary for this lawyer, right? Because he's like, Gracetown's in like the old South. I'm like going into dangerous territory here. But the lawyer's tactic in the Gracetown courthouse with the white judge is to like start off with jokes and just basically try to like disarm him so that they're on a little bit more equal footing. And Gloria is there, and you can tell she's just like horrified. Like, you're just being jovial with this judge who sentenced my brother to the Reformatory for 6 months. But that's, he's also a lawyer and he wants to win cases.
Placating. Yeah, and placating.
And with all of these characters, like with Miss Ann Powell and Loman and the lawyer, they do make some headway, but they're frustrated in their endeavor to try to release Robbie at every turn. But it's a really cool subplot between having Robbie at the Reformatory and then having these parts with Gloria trying to find ways to get him out.
Yeah, and it's interesting too how everyone, even though they're all these characters that Dan was just talking about, are willing to help or want to help, but they're all hesitant. Miss Anne is hesitant. The lawyer's hesitant to go there. Well, actually, Dorsey is ready to go, but the head of the NAACP chapter of Florida, who is also in the picture, is hesitant because it's in the wrong direction, and he knows about the town and he knows about Gloria's father, and there's always a hesitation to help others. I think in more cases than not in this book, people do end up helping, just maybe not at their full ability. Like Dorsey goes and talks to the judge and pretty much gets run out of town, and that's the last we hear of them. They're not coming with a bunch of people to save the day. They're like, well, we tried, we got to get out of here now before we get lynched, kind of thing. It's an interesting dynamic to have to navigate through, and Gloria's frustration is so palpable and really just drives her throughout the book. And she's such a powerful character. I'm trying to say it's really great to see, but it's just such a horrible circumstance that like it sucks. But it's nice to have a really strong female character as a lead too. And she's not a final girl. It's great. She doesn't have to be a final girl.
Yeah. So, and it also shows too that like, it's no secret that the Reformatory is basically forced labor. There's no one who's like, but aren't they just learning and like becoming better people? No.
It's an open secret. Is that what it's called? Or
yeah, I guess that can work. And another interesting fact, which was a real thing with other reform schools, is that they're making money off these kids, right? Because they're having them do forced labor. I don't remember if they get actually paid by the state too for each person, but there are some allusions to like, we need to keep kids in here, and the warden will like extend boys' punishment, like how long they need to stay there off of any infraction, because that's free work, which means that they can sell more crops or sell more bricks or, whatever they're having the kids do, they can make money off of that. And just to show like how twisted the whole mission statement or whatever you want to call it of this place is. When Robbie first gets the reformatory, he goes straight to the warden's office, and the warden's like, "Can you read that sign?" I mean, it's the old classic, "He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes." And that's the King James version. And then the warden named Haddock is like, "Here's what that sign really says in plain English. As an officer of the state, I will beat you bloody and sleep like a babe at night because it will make you a better man. God himself says so. Do you understand?" So this is, religion being twisted for sadistic purposes. And I'll leave it at that because it's just religion being twisted for sadistic purposes.
Which happens all the time. I mean, that's one of the biggest complaints about organized religion is that it leads to all kinds of horrors.
Yeah, just like completely ignore the Gospels or like any of the stuff that talks about like being empathetic and loving your neighbor. Just pull out the part that like lets you beat somebody.
Yeah, Christians in America especially are very good at picking and choosing which parts of the Bible they like and which parts they don't. So it's nothing new. If that's a surprise to you, you've been living under a rock, or maybe you're from a different part of the world where you don't know enough about American Christians. But this also, what you're talking about too, with the free labor and such, these schools and the early prison systems of Jim Crow are the lead up to the prison industrial complex, which is what we're living in now in America, which is a lot of the police state stuff that you see in the war on drugs. It's all a way to keep people, mostly black people, in jail and getting, money from the state, money for police to quote unquote fight crime, and free labor, because that's still a thing that's happening today. So fun times in the fun house.
Yeah, speaking of the fun house.
Right.
All right. So Robbie is there, I don't know, not very long, on his second or third day or whatever. Within his first week of being there, a whole hell of a lot happens. But he hears about this place, the Fun House, and that's like what Boone or some of the other staff members around there will be like, don't talk back to me, or like, don't do anything, or you'll be sent to the Fun House. And even the kids will be like, don't fuck around, or you're going to get sent there. And he doesn't really know what it is. But at some point, Robbie is in the cafeteria and he's talking to this boy he meets named Blue, and then he also meets at the same time Redbone, who becomes his other friend. But he's asking Blue, kind of like looking at the windows, has anybody tried to run away from here? And that is overheard. And so because of that, at like 2 a.m, he's pulled out of bed with Redbone and taken to the Fun House, where they both just get whipped. Not 100 times, but
I think it was like 10 and 15,
something like that. And just like, here, put this bark chip in your mouth and while we beat you. And so he finds out right away what the funhouse means.
Yeah, your back is going to be turned into ribbons. So it's pretty nasty.
And so right away, Robbie's like, I got to get out of here. So we have like the story of Gloria using external help to try to get him out. And then Robbie just, as he's moving around the reformatory, looking for different ways that he could possibly leave. But they have dogs there, and they have stories,
and fences, and guns, and the neighbors around the reformatory are all farmers, and they know if they hear the bell going, they come out with their guns and they're ready to shoot anyone who might be trying to escape. And they're offered rewards.
There's a $50 reward for,
which is a good amount of money in this time period.
Yeah, for bringing in a runaway, dead or alive, usually dead.
He talks to Gloria, I think, like 2 days after he gets in there, and she says, we're going to get you out. Not in so many words. She's much more subtle about it than me, but they communicate to Robbie that they are going to try to break him out on Sunday, and he's like, it's got to be sooner. And so they negotiate to Friday. And so it's pretty much just Robbie trying to survive this week until he is going to try to make his escape. And it's hard. It's hard to be there. It's like 4 days, 5 days he's got to survive, and it's it's surprising that he makes it to Friday. Spoiler, I guess, not really, but it's also a very big book.
Yeah, it's like 650 pages or something
for like a week. Yeah, it's.
I think it might be a week and a half. I feel like because Gloria comes to him with this idea to break him out once all of her attempts, like with Miss Anne and with John Dorsey, have been frustrated.
Yeah.
And she starts to learn more about the Reformatory and how, like, while he may be sentenced there for 6 months, that doesn't really mean anything. That could be extended, or he could be killed. And without getting into too much spoiler territory, we would have saved some of it for you to discover in your reading, but the warden ends up taking a big liking to Robbie once he finds out that Robbie can see these haints and essentially help hunt them down for the warden's collection of haint dust.
Yeah, I'm like, even in death, they can't escape this fucker. I have a quote of Miss Lottie talking about what it's like to work at the Reformatory, that she is explaining to Gloria what it was like for Gloria's uncle to work there. I think it was like for about a month. He didn't stay very long, but I found this fascinating and a really quick and telling description. So she says, day by day, he wasn't the sweet boy who'd gone to work there. Day by day, you could see something growing behind his eyes that wasn't him anymore. Nothing like the Christian-raised boy I knowed. He told me about things he saw, things he did. And it's just so spooky, just you can see it in his eyes that he's not okay. And that's just from working there. Now imagine living there, which Redbone, he has the same amount of time that Robbie does, which is 6 months, but he's at the end of like a 2-year stint. So he's like, yeah, I'll be your friend, but you better not fuck me over because I'm almost out of here and I'm not staying longer because you can't figure out how to behave properly.
Yeah, because this whole system turns the boys against each other, right? So after Redbone and Robbie go to the fun house, and they're definitely like, it's hard to say friends because everything is so like fragile and dangerous, but yeah, they form a camaraderie with each other. But after their visit to the fun house, when they were long out of earshot, Redbone said, if you get me sent to the fun house again, I'm going to whip you myself. He didn't sound like the same Redbone who'd played cards with him. Blue talks too much, but you were stupid to ask him. Everybody thinks they'll run, but nobody gets out. And if they get out, they don't stay out. 6 months is the end of my time. It's all you got, but it's the end for me. If Haddock gives me more time because you mess up again, you and me ain't friends, and I'll knock your teeth out. Just watch. So even these...
Talk about desperate, right? As a kid, and you're like talking like this, it just shows how you do not want to be sent here. So my quote was Miss Lottie, and I mentioned before I really liked her. She was a really strong character. She was a slave. She was born into slavery, and she talks a little bit about how at one point she was used as a means to warm up this white woman's feet. So she would have to lay, I think, on her feet or under, or I'm not sure exactly the logistics, but she was basically like a heating bladder, those like, we don't really use them so much here in America, at least not that I'm aware of, but it's just like a little bladder where you fill with hot water and you put it in your bed and it keeps it warm. But she was used as this tool, basically, along with, also other responsibilities. But that one kept coming up. She's just such a character. And she has this one line when she is with Gloria and in her rundown car. This thing is barely surviving. Only Miss Lottie can drive it because it's so temperamental. It's like an old Model T, I think. It's like everything you can imagine. This old rundown car in the South. I kept thinking... They
can like see the ground through the boards. It's coughs and hiccups and all that.
It's like Sinners, but like really rundown. Driving through the cornfields, But her and Gloria got pulled over at one point by a cop, and they had a pistol in their car and
In the laundry basket.
in the laundry basket, which was their excuse for why they're out driving, because you have to have an excuse. You can't just be driving while black. So they get pulled over, and it's almost a bad situation. Something happens that prevents it from going downhill fast, but Miss Lottie says, "I thought I was going to have to kill both of them crackers today," Miss Lottie muttered. She said it like she had avoided a sudden rainstorm or a nail in the road. I just love that so much, because it just shows the resilience and the like, well, fuck these people, you know, I'll play their games to their face, but like, I'm not putting up with their shit. Like, if they go too far, I will kill them. And I'm like, yeah, Miss Lottie, she's so cool.
Yeah, and it's one of those moments where, like, she's such an interesting character because you view her through Gloria's eyes, and some of the time Gloria's like, oh, her vision is failing, and like all this stuff with Robbie is so stressful for her at her old age. But then there are moments like this where she's like, oh, damn. Like, Aunt Lottie is still has some fire in her.
And she knows, like, here's another one from her. "One thing I've learned," Miss Lottie went on, "everything seems fine until it ain't. And then we come to see it wasn't never fine." And those kind of things are shown throughout. And it's such a good way to see, like, yes, it might seem fine. Everyone's smiling above, you know, on their faces, but down below, it's very contentious. It's everybody's walking on eggshells around each other. And that sentiment comes through really well when Gloria thinks to herself. Gloria knew she could make the tedious call herself, but she was tired. "They wear you down one wrong at a time," Mama used to say. And I felt like this book was even doing that to me. It was just wearing me down, dealing with these fucking racist white people who suck so much. And that was just from a book, you know, and like, this is life. Even today, for so many people, it's just infuriating.
Having said all that, though, it was also a really good book.
Yeah, it was.
It's like, yeah, it's really difficult, but not to give the idea that it's just like it does tear you apart, but it's also like, it's very cinematic and it handles, I don't know if I call it a large cast, but yeah, I don't know, mid to large cast very well. And even though it's like over 600 pages, it has a really good pace to it. I didn't feel like there were any parts that really slogged for me.
No, not at all.
And it's just it's a really well written book. And I don't know, like, I don't know if fun is the right word, but I couldn't put it down. I really wanted to like see what was going to happen. I really liked the characters, even though like horrible things do happen in the book. It's never drawn out or felt like exploitative. There'll be sections where Robbie and Redbone go to the funhouse, and that's like a really hard scene. But then also like with Gloria going to her different contacts. And then there are some moments where Robbie gets like a little bit of a break and gets to play cards with his friends, or he meets Mrs. Hamilton, who is a black woman who comes as a music teacher and like recognizes Robbie's talent on the trumpet. So he starts playing some music while he's there, which gives him a little bit of something. So like the way that the book is paced, it's not just like relentless on you. It has a good push and pull between difficult moments and then also more dramatized, interesting moments that aren't just all the violence going on.
I have a quote.
You have a quote? You're all quoted up.
I have a positive quote. This one actually comes from Mrs. Hamilton talking about music. So, "Once you leave, you can take music wherever you go, and learning something will help you realize you can learn anything else you put your mind to." So yeah, there's a moment of positivity. Also, it was kind of fun. I don't think I started this, but I was reading this while we were in Chicago, which was kind of fun since they're trying so hard to get to Chicago. And I'm like, hey, I'm there.
Yeah, they're trying to get to their dad who went to Chicago.
Yeah, so that was kind of just a fun coincidence since, you know, we're on the West Coast. We're not really in that area ever.
But we had just been there.
Yeah,
so cool.
We were there while I was reading it. And I was like, oh, Chicago, that's kind of a fun thing. And it gave me a different lens to look through, too, while we were in Chicago, thinking about what Chicago was like in the 50s and the 60s and just how different, yet in some ways the same. It was a fun little thing to keep in mind.
I read this book in 3 different formats. It's funny. So I started out with like
You
the
sound
normal.
like me.
I started out with a normal print book, but Amber was way ahead of me in this, and she's been putting like sticky notes in the book
Because we were
throughout.
traveling. I couldn't not take notes.
Yeah, but like they're covering up the words, and she's like, you can take them off. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to get a copy from the library. But all they had was the large print edition.
Because this book is still very popular. It's so good. It was impossible to get a copy. Yeah.
Which I got. And it was funny because like I kind of got used to reading it, but it was like, at first I was holding it to my face at like the same distance as a normal book, and my eyes were just moving so fast because, you know, there's only so many words per line in a large print book. So I learned that if I like kind of held it back further and unfocused my eyes a little bit, I could read it without my eyes zigzagging so much.
It's like the opposite of the point of the large print.
Yeah. And then thankfully our hold for Kindle came through, so I switched and I finished on the Kindle. But I probably read like, I don't know, 100 pages in the large print format, and it was kind of fun because you're turning pages so quickly, but I also kind of got a mild headache.
I found it really interesting too, speaking specifically about the large print, is, you know, it's of course for people who have vision issues. I know I used to get my OMA a ton of large print books back in the day, and the cover was different for the Reformatory. It was more subtle. I don't know, like it's such a beautiful cover, and I just the original version, I have the hardcover, which I think is the same as the paperback, but the large print seemed softer. It was almost like I felt like it was going to be a romance or something.
Yeah, it totally had a different vibe to it.
Which was really weird. Like, I don't know if that was like why, you know?
It's almost like they zoomed in on the picture to also make the cover bigger.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know, because you just see the building.
No, it's a totally different building.
It's just like a nice little looking cabin.
It looks like a little cabin. I'll take a picture of them side by side and post them on our Instagram. But yeah, it just looks very different. And not to say that the original one looks nefarious. The color scheme is just gorgeous, but like the spooky fog, and it looks like a little chapel on the original, but I kind of started to think of it as the fun house. And this one just looks more like, I don't know, like
any old,
well, like a country western, like
yeah.
What's that show?
Like it could be a story about a boy going to a reformatory, but it's like much more lighthearted. I don't know.
Yeah, it just seems more Midwestern, like the frontier than the South. I don't know. It's an interesting choice that they didn't just keep the same cover. And I wonder if that's part of why it was actually at the library, because people might have looked at it and be like, oh, that must be a different book. But I don't know. I just thought that was fascinating. I don't know. My brain caught on to that and was like, why? But yeah, I mean, this was a large book, so we've definitely skimmed over a lot. It's also a hard subject. It's also a hard subject to talk about as a white person. You know, it's like hold space, but like know your place. But yeah, I definitely recommend this book. It's heavy, but so many books that are worth reading are hard to read, and it's important to read the hard stuff too. You know, it's important to be engaged in your history. It's important to be engaged in your culture. It's important to be engaged with topics that may not feel like they affect you personally, but they still do. You're still part of the society that has a huge variety of people. And I feel that this is a great glimpse into a portion of our history through the lens of horror that in a sense make it a little bit easier to read, because knowing it's a horror book, you're a little bit more prepared and willing to accept things that you might not if it wasn't.
Yeah,
if it wasn't horror.
There's a documentary called The Nickel Boys that came out, I think, a few years ago.
It's a book, isn't it?
Maybe it was based off a book. I know it was a movie too.
Yeah, a novel by Colson Whitehead.
Oh.
I think I've read it.
Oh, I saw that. I guess they also made a documentary about it, which is about the Dozier School of Boys, which we had mentioned this was based off of. And after reading the book, I was like, oh, I should watch that documentary. But I didn't, because it was like the book already
I've read
sent
this.
me through the ringer.
I gave this 4 stars. I read this in 2020, so it's been a minute.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, The Underground Railroad. This was a really good book. I remember this.
Was it nonfiction?
No, it's, I believe it's a novel.
Oh, then I'm totally wrong.
They create like an underground railroad. No. Sorry. That's a different book. Oh my God. Okay. Colson Whitehead also wrote The Underground Railroad.
So it's about 2 black boys who go to the actual Dozier School of Boys. But I guess I'm wrong. It's not a documentary.
Well, they might have made a documentary about the Dozier School.
No, there's a feature film called The Nickel Boys, based off of the book, The Nickel Boys.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah. So you just thought that the film was a documentary.
We do our research on it.
We do it as we talk about it. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Did I read The Underground Railroad too now? Yes, I've also read The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. That was also a fabulous book. That's the cover with it's red and it looks almost like a snake. Yeah, that was also, I read that in 2018. Holy macaroni. Yeah, I would recommend his books for sure.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that book cover around. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you said you really liked the book. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, it's great. I loved it. I guess I really like difficult books. The last book of our first season was Tender as the Flesh, which was also like a tough read, and I loved it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that was dystopian, which I love dystopia, and this is historical fiction. And if you listen to anything last season, you know how much I love history and read history, and this was a really good one. I kept seeing this one pop up, and I didn't know what it was about for quite some time, and it came up. Someone posted this in a Instagram post of California books, and I was very confused, and I still am. That made no sense.
Maybe she lives in LA now or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the book. I don't know. I mean, Chicago would be a stretch, but so I think that person just didn't know what the hell they were doing. But oh yeah, well she teaches at UCLA. Yeah. So we even said that. That's a stretch. But yeah, this was tough. It's a fun one to start our second season with.
Yeah, and as if you listen to our Summer Ween update, we've got all kinds of horror subgenres that we're going to be talking about. So, I mean, the Reformatory was really tough, but we're going to be following this up with Tastes Like Candy, which is some bubblegum cotton candy horror. So we're going to be going all over the spectrum.
Going from historical Southern Gothic is what I have it marked as my genre to a teen slasher. So we're just going to take you on a roller coaster of horror.
As long as there's killing, we'll be talking about it. Sort of.
Well, the joke is taste of candies at a carnival house. So the roller coasters. There's the laugh. Oh, thank God. Okay. Phew. Thought I crashed and burned on that one.
Off the roller coaster?
Off the roller coaster.
It's like our friend's story that we just read in our writing group.
That was a good one. Yeah. So, I mean, we could go on and on. I think you probably get the point. Hopefully enough to, if you haven't read this book already, to be interested enough to go read it. It's well done. I am definitely going to read more stuff from Dew. She's a great storyteller. Speaking of stories, what have you been reading? Yeah, I think it's that time. Yeah, let's do it. So because of this book, I actually in Dew's author's note, she talks a little bit about who the characters are. That's when she mentions how Dorsey is modeled after her father and such. She mentions The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which I had read like 5-ish years ago now at this point. And so I picked that up again. I figure that would be helpful. And I did give a little a little history there, but that book is nonfiction, and it is Alexander is looking at the shift from slavery through Jim Crow into the industrial prison complex / police state that we live in today. How we got to where we are with mass incarceration, the war on drugs, which has been an abject failure and just a control mechanism. And I'm about halfway through the book now, and it's been the history of, and I think she gets, if I remember correctly, she gets a little bit more into like, it's all been politics and such, and like how Reagan started the war on drugs. And it's also a very hard read. It's also a very important read. I think everyone should have to read The New Jim Crow, as well as Cast: The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. That's another just fabulous book talking about race relations in the United States. And I'm reading The Black Carnival, which is by Harlequin Grimm. That actually isn't out yet. I got that on NetGalley. It seems like a really interesting book, and I'm about halfway through that as well. That comes out October 25th, and it's very much a mood book. I love it. It's very dark. It takes place in England around a carnival. Tim Burton could make this into a film. It's very like everyone wears black and gray stripes, or reds are the only, black, gray, and red are like the only colors mentioned. Everyone has like curly hair, and it's very bleak and morbid and morose. It's such a good mood book. So that's not out yet, but I suggest, or I recommend it at least halfway through for reading when it comes out. It's very good for if you're in a mood, a goth mood. And that's it. I've been keeping up with summer activities, so I've been slow in the reading world. What about you?
I picked up this cool anthology at the library recently called Appendix N: Weird Tales from the Roots of Dungeons and Dragons. I wanted to pick up some more weird fiction, and this one came up, and it's really cool. It's like a collection of stories that Gary Gygax, who created D&D, was the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, listed as co-creator. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the history of Dungeons and Dragons, but essentially, this guy put together a reading list of some of the short fiction, at least, that inspired him when he was making the D&D universe, which sounds really cool. And I've read the first 2 stories in it, and they're a lot of fun. They're more mid-20th century kind of stories, maybe. I think the first 2 were in the 70s, so a little bit later than that. But there was one with like a stone dragon that comes and messes up a warlord. And then the second one was really cool, is a Viking story with a werewolf and a drow in it.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's cool. So I'm looking forward to reading more of that. And then I've mentioned this one before because I kind of go through it in and out, but also I've been reading Writing in the Dark by Tim Waggoner, who's a horror novelist, and it's just like talking about horror writing because I'm still trying to figure that out. And yeah, that's it so far. But pretty soon I'm going to have a lot of time to read, in which I'm looking
a week and a half.
Hey man,
you'll get one book in. Come on.
We'll see. Maybe if I've succeeded, then I'll have an episode coming up where I talk about a lot of stuff that I read.
Hopefully. I mean,
hope
it's
so.
Yeah. I'm more power to you trying to read, but
my goal is two books, because we're getting the Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. We also got a 200-page book lent to us from someone in our writers group who was like, this is really good. And it's written by someone from Dublin, Ireland. So I want to read it. And then maybe, like some short stories. That's my hope.
That's a fair hope, I guess.
Yeah, that's a fair hope.
So up next, we're reading Tastes Like Candy by Jessica Lacy. That actually is going to be released on September 9th. So the book doesn't come out until this one has posted. And that episode will post on September 16th. This is actually technically a re-release of the same titled book when Jessica was going by the pen name Ivy Tholine, which I know we have discussed in prior episodes. I was reading Mallrats at one point last season, and so she's re-releasing this, and we're doing an episode on that. And then after that, we're doing Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle, and I'm going to start saying 3 because that's how I'm doing the posts. And so after that, we have Maeve Fly by C.J. Leede coming as our first October book.
And I know you're real excited about that one.
Yes, I loved that book. Hopefully I love it just as much reading it again. I don't see why not. Now I'm worried. No, and I'm not worried, but yeah. So we're going to have some fun.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We'll be posting every 2 weeks for like 24 books worth of weeks. So that takes us to next summer.
Looking forward to it. We've missed doing this a lot.
Yeah, definitely check out our season 1 episodes if you missed any of those. And thanks for listening. See you next time.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, and let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.